The first half of this book concludes the Turnabout Gallows story for the last book. I thought they would start at the courtroom, but we get 15 pages of investigation first. It kind of feels like the author went, "Uh-oh, I forgot some clues. Gotta sneak them in real quick before the trial starts."
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
Phoenix returns to the crime scene. He and Edgeworth discover the picture that the victim drew. Edgeworth dismisses it as totally irrelevant information, which is a rookie mistake on his part. Phoenix notes the table legs and chair legs are badly burned, but the floor wasn't burned at all. How is that possible? Now the trial begins. When the first two witnesses testify, Phoenix leans heavily on the fact that Bobby was obsessed with his spider collection. He wouldn't destroy his spiders in a fire. Edgeworth has an explanation. Bobby didn't start the fire on purpose. He started it by accident because he occasionally used gas cans as a footstool. That is a very unsafe thing to do. I mean, I love books, and even I would use one of the hundreds of giant books in the room as a footstool before using gasoline. Phoenix disproves Edgeworth's theory by pointing out that gas cans were on a high shelf. Bobby would have needed a footstool in order to reach them. Nobody's going to get a footstool in order to reach a second footstool. It's like when they wrap a pair of scissors in hard plastic, so you need scissors to get your scissors. Edgeworth asks for a brief recess so he can provide an end-of-chapter cliffhanger. He has a tense confrontation with a shadowy witness in the hallway. Trial resumes. The surprise witness is Brock. Edgeworth cleverly bluffed him into confessing, which is a good trick. Phoenix should try that sometime. Brock tries to avoid murder charges by confessing to the lesser crime of arson. He says he planted the time bomb in the building. It's just a coincidence that it went off at the same time the victim was killed by a blow to the head. Yeah, right. Nobody's gonna believe that. Brock says the Spider-Man thing was Bobby's drunken prank. That's something no one comments on. Bobby is accused of committing murder while drunk. The defendant wasn't in his right mind at the time, as confirmed by Detective Gumshoe. I feel like that should have some effect on the trial and Phoenix's defense. Phoenix gets sad. He's about to give up when Maya asks what her sister would do. Phoenix remembers Mia's words of wisdom, and I would not be surprised to learn this moment was all an excuse to include attractive pictures of Mia. They put her on the back cover, even though she's only in the book for a page. Phoenix solves the case when he looks at the picture that the victim drew. The picture is upside down. Phoenix realizes he's holding the paper upside down. Oops, silly Phoenix. No big revelation here. I'm joking. Phoenix realizes the picture is not upside down. Rather, the victim drew it while hanging upside down from the ceiling. That explains why the table and chair legs were burned when the floor wasn't. They were bolted to the ceiling at the time. Now, I find it a little hard to believe the victim managed to pull out a pencil and do a detailed sketch without realizing he was upside down, especially with his arms and restraints. He would have dropped the paper or the pencil for sure. Brock is the culprit. He's the only one strong enough to bolt things to the ceiling. He's also the only one with the electrical expertise to make sure the restraining chair was fully powered despite being on the ceiling. It is strongly implied that Edgeworth knew Brock was guilty all along. Edgeworth purposely manipulated Phoenix and the course of the trial to reach this outcome. He's a clever one, Mr. Edgeworth. The rest of the book is a case called Turnabout Showtime. Phoenix and Maya are at a theme park with security guard Wendy Oldbag and giant cartoon character costumes. It's a lot like Case 3 of the first Edgeworth game. There's a stage show with the characters. They're played by Flip Chambers, the victim who can do forward flips, Buck Montana, the gambler, Raymond Spoom, the perfectionist. Julie Henson is also in the show. She's the only one who doesn't wear a costume. Phoenix has a huge crush on her, since she looks a little like his ex-girlfriend. Maya doesn't seem to know about Dahlia, so Does this story take place in between Game 2 and 3? Spoom warns Julie not to bite her nails. Flip does an impressive backflip during the show. At the very end, he stumbles on stage and dies from a knife wound to the stomach. Several times the book calls this a locked room murder, even though it's not a room. Flip's body was inside a costume the whole time. The culprit couldn't have stabbed Flip from the outside, because there are no holes in the costume. The culprit couldn't have gotten into the costume, because the hidden zipper was covered with glue. Also, the zipper's in the back, while Flip was stabbed in the front. Julie is accused of the murder, since she's the only one who could move her hands at the time of the killing. Everybody else was trapped in a costume. They couldn't have stabbed anyone. In a nearby storeroom, Phoenix finds a sharp wire wrapped around a pipe. He realizes this is a secret trick. Someone wearing a costume can hook their zipper to the wire. That way they can unzip themselves and get out of the costume without outside help. Great deduction, but Old Bag's security camera shows that nobody entered the storeroom to use the wire. Me? I'm wondering why only one of the 4 rooms had a security camera. It would have helped a lot if the security camera had been watching the crime scene and not the random storeroom several rooms over. Spoom testifies. He says the defendant hid a retractable knife inside the costume ahead of time. It was held in place with duct tape. I wonder why Phoenix didn't find the duct tape when he searched the inside of the costume. I'm also wondering how the knife was removed from the costume, and nobody bothers to explain that part of the scenario. Edgeworth is extra shouty when asking for a verdict. Phoenix turns the case around. Literally. He realizes the victim was wearing his costume backwards. That's how he did a backflip instead of his usual front flip. This also explains how the victim was stabbed in the stomach. If you're stabbed from behind, while standing backwards, you're hit in the front. The culprit must have undone the zipper, stabbed the victim, then pulled up the zipper and glued it shut to cover up what happened. There is a small air hole in the back of the costume heads. The air hole is first mentioned so close to the end of the case, it feels a little like cheating. The air hole is the only way you can see in the costume, which is impossible in real life. We are talking about a long show with precise choreography, like backflips. No way are all the performers blind the whole time. In real life, they would probably have video monitors inside the costumes, but I guess they don't because that would ruin the whole stabbed in the stomach story. Spoom knows the defendant bit her nails during the show. He couldn't have seen that unless he was wearing the costume backwards as well. He did this so he could easily undo the zipper from the inside, leave the costume, commit murder, then get back inside. Spoom gives a full confession. Phoenix and Edgeworth are forced to be the temporary replacements in the stage show. They fight the whole time. The end. Post-book follow-up. I just realized that the defendants don't testify in this book series. I wonder if that's better or worse than the games, where defendants like Larry Butts give terrible testimonies that make them look guilty. It certainly does seem that a decent chunk of the courtroom revelations could be skipped if Phoenix talked to the defendant, either on the witness stand or before the trial. Like Phoenix should ask, "Hey Bobby, somebody framed you while you were drunk. Who got you drunk?" Bobby would say it was Brock, and that would skip half the trial. There is a joke comic at the end with the 3 main prosecutors. It's the only appearance of Godot in this series. I wonder if the second case was intended to be split into 2 chapters like the first one was. There is a point halfway through where Phoenix stops and starts recapping what happened so far, like he's bringing new readers up to date on the story. Overall, I like the book, even though the first case's solution is implausible, and they probably could have reduced the story down from 4 chapters to 3. On the other hand, the games would probably expand the story length by having every suspect testify with contradictions. Too bad Old Bag didn't testify in this book. That would have been hilarious. I give Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Volume 2 an 8 out of 10.